So what does the prosecutor have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt? That first, Alec Baldwin pointed the muzzle of what he knew to be a real gun directly at Helena Hutchins. Well, obviously, we know that's true because the bullet that was fired from that muzzle directly impacted Helena Hutchins. Clearly, the muzzle was pointed at her. Second, that Alec Baldwin pressed the trigger in a manner designed to fire the gun, in this particular case with the hammer cocked. We know that's true because when the gun was sent for FBI testing, it was impossible to fire the gun without the trigger being depressed. Third, that Alec Baldwin failed to first ensure that there was no live ammo in the gun. We know that's true because there was a bullet in there that fired. And the result was that the unintended discharge of the bullet hit Miss Hutchins and killed her. We know that's true. These are the only things that Special Prosecutor Kerry Morrissey has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt. There's lots of other things that people talk about. Like, well, it wasn't Alec Baldwin's fault to check the gun. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. In fact, New Mexico law explicitly doesn't care. Does not care. New Mexico Supreme Court. This is a different case, of course, but it involved someone who claimed, I didn't know the gun was loaded, and was convicted of involuntary manslaughter and said, no, that's wrong. I can't be convicted. I didn't know the gun was loaded. Just like Alec Baldwin is saying, I didn't know the gun was loaded. What does the New Mexico Supreme Court have to say about that? They say it could have made no difference to the trial of a charge of involuntary manslaughter as to who loaded the gun. All that is necessary to establish for involuntary manslaughter by the use of a loaded firearm is that a defendant, Alec Baldwin, had in his hands a gun which at some time had been loaded, and that he handled it without due caution and circumspection, and that death resulted. Bam! So unless the defense has exculpatory evidence that goes to one of these four elements, and they really can't. Res ipsa loquitur, the thing speaks for itself. All of this demonstrably happened. Or unless the defense had evidence that asserted a defense. So even if this is true, he still had a defense. Like you could imagine, well, suddenly Helena Hutchins lost her mind and came at Alec Baldwin with a machete. Well, then he shot her in self-defense. But of course, that's not at play here. So when we read through the defense motion and they're saying, we have this exculpatory evidence. It's not exculpatory evidence in any legal sense of that word because it does not tend to negate any of the elements of the crime. And it doesn't go to a legal defense, a raisable legal defense. It's just when they say exculpatory, what they mean is sympathetic, emotionally sympathetic.